I'm black. I can't be racist
You
to
call me a racist. Now you can
black
respond.
Women cannot be racist to white women. Are you kidding me?
Oh, yes,
I
they can.
You don't have the intellectual
yes, they
capacity
can.
to understand that.
Oh, yes, they can. You've been racist to me, a white man, by saying I'm a race baiter. A baiter with no evidence.
To me.
2 weeks ago, I signed an executive order banning men from playing in women's sports.
I was a federal worker who had 1 month left of her probationary period.
It's so important for American people to understand what's happening. Their government, their watchdog agencies, the people who go to work every day to fight for them are being fired illegally.
I used to be a federal employee. I'm going to tell you why I don't feel bad for federal employees being forced to come back into the work.
The Trump administration, in order to do a wide-scale reduction in force, any probationary employee that is still within their 1 to 2 year period is just fired.
Russia is a weak country. Russia historically has lost almost all of their wars. We need to give Ukraine the ability for them to absolutely destroy Russia, because destroying Russia means that the rest of Western Europe is secure too.
He's flagrantly lying. The worst thing is that the president of the United States is lying. His lies track perfectly with the talking points of Vladimir Putin.
Do you think calling Elon Musk a dick is effective messaging for confronting what is a potentially irreversible transformation of the U.S. government?
Well, he is a what I think is really important, and what the American public want, is for us to bring actual weapons to this bar fight. Marjorie Taylor Greene talks about having decorum. This is the person that lies more than anybody else in the entire Congress. It's also important to get the attention of the American public and to make people know that Marjorie Taylor Greene is not a serious legislator, and she shouldn't be treated as such.
Good afternoon and welcome. How are you doing today?
Doing well.
Good. Welcome to The Last Man. I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Terry.
So you had a good week, Terry?
Yeah, it's been pretty busy.
Yeah.
Yep. I think every time we start, I talk about family.
That's okay.
Over. New families in town.
Hoo-ha.
Yeah.
And they're multiplying.
Oh, man. It's crazy. Trying to keep up. I need a bigger house. That's what it is.
Right. I hear you, man. That's the way life goes.
Yep.
Well, you know, I've got 3 kids, so I understand that concept.
Oh yeah,
completely. So, anyway, but you have had a good week.
Yeah, it was good. Work's been very busy. They keep piling on stuff, which hey, keep it coming.
Getting their money's worth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's the way to do it. Well,
how about yourself? How you been?
I've been good. It's been fairly typical week. We had a couple snow days this week, so
sure did. Had
kids hanging around the house and doing the standard. I don't have to be at school the next day type stuff. Like, don't you think it's time to go to bed? Like,
yeah,
we don't have school. I'm like, yeah, okay. But yeah, it's 3 teenagers, so they're 15, 16, and 18. Or no, is that right? Yeah, 15, 17, and 18 rather. So it's never a dull moment. So
yeah,
2 of them work together. The older 2 have the same job at the same restaurant.
Oh, that's right.
And it's interesting. It's handy for them because they can swap shifts and do stuff like that. But still, it's fun to watch. So
good. And the desserts are tasty.
Yes, they are. They definitely bring home some appreciated pastries and such.
I'll have to see what the latest selection is.
Yeah, definitely. Well, got a few things to get into tonight. It's politically and national news wise, it's been a pretty wild week. The rhetoric hasn't changed much. The stories haven't changed much. They're still saying the same thing, that Doge and President Trump's trashing the country and destroying democracy. And I don't know. I'm sure I'm missing 5 or 10 adjectives there,
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's very, very ridiculous. And, there's never a dull moment
No.
I mean, if you pay attention to everything that's going on and all of the conjecture
Yeah.
that's out there,
Yeah.
There's a lot of information, but it's so disorganized.
Right.
And you're going to see what we're talking about once we click play on some of these videos.
Oh yeah, some of them are wild, and it's. I was thinking about that this week. The fact that, man, we really got accustomed to not hearing much from the president, not much happening. I mean, except there toward the very end when he started pardoning everybody and doing all sorts of wild stuff. Biden, I mean, and but we actually have a president that's doing something. There's news almost every day now.
Yep.
It's just constant. Quick pace, you know. You can tell, and he's in his last term, and he's trying to have an impact. So
yeah, I don't know if you watched the latest clips of Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I didn't see them,
but yeah, one of the skits was just that. They were like, breaking news, Trump just announced, and then ding ding ding, breaking news, and then that was the whole segment. It was pretty hilarious.
Right. Well, it's a valid point, especially compared to the pace we've gotten accustomed to, which. You know, the president going to bed at 8 o'clock and our enemies knowing it. So
yeah,
you know, that was
we had time to take naps.
Yeah,
back then.
Of course, he would do it in the middle of conversations.
Yeah,
he didn't care. Yeah. Well. So anyway, why don't you introduce us to the first and kick us off, get us going.
Yeah, so we got a clip from Piers Morgan's one of his recent interviews, and how about we just click play and just watch the I don't know how to describe it. We'll just play
watch the madness ensue.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, let's do it.
Paralympics with the regular Olympics, had them all compete with each other?
We talk about trans people, we're talking about gender identity. I need both of y'all mindset to become more expansive.
Right.
I know that's a little hard for
Can you
both
answer
of
my question?
I think what you're saying is conservative propaganda. I think what you're saying is y'all.
Can you answer my question?
I mean, why not? And to go back to Riley's point to
why
that.
not?
Oh my gosh!
Oh,
You are completely insane.
Honey, it takes one to know one.
People like Blossom are exactly why Donald Trump won.
For me, this is absolutely about the integrity of competition.
It seems completely insane to me.
When it comes to the biology of sport, it is very, very clear cut.
So this is a Piers Morgan uncensored episode. I'm actually not sure whether it broadcasts on television or just online, but we're going to jump into it, and there is a very interesting guest that they have on to discuss this issue. It's Riley Gaines, the Olympic athlete, and a online personality named Blossom. I don't know that I'd heard of her before this, but
yeah.
But or him, I guess it's a her. Yeah.
They.
Okay.
Yep.
All this is Blossom C. Brown, a transgender activist who sparred with Michael Knowles on Jubilee this week.
Hi.
Hello.
Blossom.
Oh, okay.
She, her, hers powerhouse.
The Blossom Powerhouse. Lovely to meet you.
And the great Riley Gaines, who's been a fantastic trailblazer.
Okay, I didn't realize she was that tall. Like, she's taller than most men.
Well, she's tall. She's tall for a man. Is that what we're saying?
Well, yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hello.
She's tall for a man.
Okay.
She's transgender, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Okay.
Blossom.
Yeah. Okay.
She, her, hers powerhouse.
The Blossom Powerhouse. Lovely to meet you.
And the great Riley Gaines, who's been a fantastic trailblazer for safeguarding women's rights in all this, is the host of Gaines for Girls on Outkick. You had a front row seat, Riley, at the White House when the president signed that executive order, which was quite a moment. First of all, how did you feel being there for that moment in history, which you've campaigned so hard for?
Well, thank you, Piers, for having me on. Always a joy to be on with you.
Rather than
there was a
digging
lot of
in,
emotions. Of course.
I want to go ahead and get into what we're going to look at, if that's okay. If we can jump forward a bit, and we probably should have marked the timing a little better. But here,
why do we separate the sexes at the Olympics?
Piers, if you actually let me get to it, because you let Riley have her talking point, so I'm going to actually have my talking point right now. CC is definitely a wonderful person, and I think, let's be clear, Donald Trump is a complete moron. Donald Trump talks so much about waste and fraud, and you're signing a whole executive order banning trans women from playing sports. According to the NCAA, there are over 510,000 athletes, and within those athletes, there are only less than 10 trans athletes. So you mean to tell me Donald Trump signed an executive order for 0.002 of the population when trans people are only 1%? That's a waste. That is a waste. Trans people exist. There are more than two sexes. There are intersex people that exist. And I think that it's nothing more than conservative propaganda that because Donald Trump is in power, he is able to use. I think Donald Trump should stop booty clapping to Elon Musk and actually get something done in this country. And eradicating trans people is not going to be it. And I stand 10 toes down on that.
Right.
Booty clapping.
Right. And eradicating trans people. Right.
Ridiculous.
Yep.
Not the case at all.
It's a mental picture I didn't need.
I know, right? And I had to Google with that. Don't Google it, by the way. Don't do that. But I don't know, man. There's a fairness of young ladies that want to participate in sports.
Yes.
Their dreams are getting crushed. It's like, I know, okay, maybe they're not that many trans athletes out there.
Well, not at the NCAA level. So you're talking about at the collegiate level. But the percentages generationally, each generational step you take down, the percentages are getting higher because this is a result of ideological, I don't know if it's exposure or like culture, it being a cultural phenomenon where it's something that everybody wants to be a part of. It's something that in a lot of schools teachers have been promoting and pushing, and it's been very celebrated. So this has become the in thing to do, right? It's become the hip thing to do. But and I'm not trying to reduce the challenges that transgender athletes or students are facing. I'm just saying that the percentages are a lot higher. So when you get to high school, you're talking about upwards of 5 to 7% of the population that is dealing with some sort of gender identity, gender dysphoria, gender conformity issue. Mm-hmm. And in those arenas, it's significantly more prevalent. So this isn't something that's limited to 10 people, nationwide. This is something that, and even if it were, in each of those circumstances, you have issues with them just trouncing records that have been on the books many times for years and years. And it's completely unleavening the playing field. So it's definitely an issue, regardless of whether the problem is they're saying, look, you're not respecting our rights. And then the response should be, now we get to completely ignore women's rights and completely overlook the fact that there were records that may have taken decades for women to get to the point where they would record them, and they're breaking them in a matter of weeks and days just with ease because they are physiologically different.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't realize how tall Blossom was and how big Blossom is as a human.
Yes.
If they were to step into the arena of boxing or wrestling or anything that requires physical effort, weightlifting, naturally endowed with much more strength and ability,
right,
than an average woman would be.
Right, and I believe the NCAA's, it was either NCAA or the Olympics committee that said that the criteria was that you had to have been on testosterone blockers or the hormone therapy to transition for at least 1 year. Mm-hmm. And so you have, in some circumstances, like the Leah Thomas circumstance, where Leah Thomas had been competing at the collegiate level as a male. And for the freshman and sophomore year, at the end of the sophomore year, they decided they were transitioning and moving to the women's team. And almost immediately, they're just slaying all the records. They're dominating. And it just kept going on, right? It went all the way up to the Olympic level. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's definitely something that's a little more nuanced than Blossom here appears to be willing to concede.
Right. And I think they want, I guess the trans activists and people, they want to feel that they are part of society, which they are, and they want to be included into sports and activities. But if there is that imbalance, if there is a genetic advantage, I mean, technically it's a genetic
or physiological,
biological, physiological.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, advantage. Then there's an unfairness to the women in the sport.
There is, and I don't know why. I don't know why this conversation honestly has gone. Well, yes, I do. I was going to say I didn't know why the conversation's gone on so long, but it's clearly gone on so long because it was promoted and adopted from a DEI perspective at the federal level, and it was encouraged. And the challenge is there's a very simple answer here, and that's to create a separate category, right? If you were to create a trans or an intersex category where it wasn't delineated by male or female, then that would be one thing, that'd be a different thing entirely, right? You would have a separate space in which they could compete, and they're not unfairly disadvantaging biological females. But for some reason, that's not been, I don't know, conceded. I don't know. There's been a severe focus on invading these women's spaces, and it doesn't end at the records at the scoreboard. It follows through to the locker room afterward, and it's a very disconcerting thing all the way around, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't like it. I've seen video clips of trans women in women's restrooms with boners.
That's a lot.
Right. No father, no parent, no guardian wants their children, their girls in the restroom with another male with an erection.
Right. And while it's probably not true, while it's probably a valid point that most trans people, let's say trans women, are not trying to use the opposite sex restrooms to feed some sort of sexual gratification, there are a large number of people who cross-dress, who dress and are attracted to the opposite sex, even though they may even identify as that sex. And it's beyond me why we would not set rules and cultural norms up in such a way that those people were not provided cover by the expectations and public the public realities that we all abide by, because otherwise there's, and I'm not saying that it's all of them. It's not. I'm not suggesting that every trans person out there is just trying to get into bathrooms with girls, right? Or a trans woman is trying to get into bathrooms with girls necessarily because there's some sort of sexual kink or gratification going on there. But the fact that it can happen and has happened, and we've had situations where there have been rapes that have been in that exact scenario, is just evidence that we have failed to properly assess the criteria that we're trying to now create policy around.
Right.
And so if we were to just go say, now every school in the country has to have intersex bathrooms, you're making, that's a huge overreach, especially when 99% of the population is not looking to engage in this issue. They don't want activism occurring in their restrooms.
Right. Not the place.
Right.
At all. But, yeah. Let's continue.
I'll say very briefly, it's this argument that it's a small percentage of the population. I hope you realize it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. It's not for every one male that's participating in a women's sport, it's one woman that's affected. In my sport, at our national championships, one male displaced 14,000 women.
Right.
Yep. And I can speak for myself, I can speak for my teammates, I can speak for 99% of other female competitors on that pool deck. We all felt betrayed. We all felt violated in the locker room. We all felt it was unfair, but not enough people were courageous enough to say it because they were terrified. They were terrified of the name calling that you just pursued. The first thing you say is Donald Trump is a moron. What 20-year-old girl wants to be called transphobic or any of the slurs that have been thrown my way? I can certainly attest to.
Riley, I think you're trying to, Riley, I think you're just trying to make it seem like that trans people are a threat to cis women in the restroom, and that's not the case. Trans women and cis women should be coming together. Trans women are not a threat to cis women.
Okay, but here's the look. But Blossom.
And I think that y'all have ran on that ideology.
Yeah, Blossom.
Y'all have ran on that ideology
Blossom,
for a very long time.
hang on.
And you're going to have to specifically tell me cases. Can you specifically tell me cases of where trans women have hurt cis women in the restroom?
Blossom,
I'd like to know that, please.
Blossom, we don't use words like cis on here because no one understands it. Let's just...
well, I use cisgender, so that's where I'm
sure you
from,
do,
and
but
that's
nobody...
what I like to use. That's in my vocabulary.
Yeah, but nobody else understands it. Let's just stick to my question. My question for you, which you have...
just because you don't understand, you just don't have the intellectual capacity.
Blossom.
Oh, my
You
God.
don't have the intellectual capacity to understand the terminology that I'm using.
Blossom, just to explain something. You're appearing on a show called Piers Morgan Uncensored. That means you can say whatever you want.
I know all about you, Piers.
Okay, you can think
and I know how you're good at race baiting. I know how you're good at being transphobic, and that's why I'm here to face you.
Just to be clear,
face you one-on-one.
When do you think I've ever race baited?
Honey, you remember that whole incident with Sharon Osbourne?
Yes.
Let's not forget.
Oh, you know, I do.
Don't get me started on that.
I do.
But we're not here to talk about Miss Sharon Osbourne.
No. What do you think happened there?
We're not here to talk about Miss Sharon Osbourne.
Yes,
we're here to talk about trans people in sports.
Hang on, you've raised...
You are notorious.
Okay, wait a minute. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about the Sharon Osbourne thing. Let me tell you what. Since you've raised it. Since you've raised it.
I'm a black trans woman.
Blossom, stop talking for a moment.
Have you ever seen him be racist? I haven't.
No.
I haven't ever once seen it. Actually, quite the opposite, actually.
So many times since I've been here.
Okay,
but
Blossom,
yet, Riley, you give
can we have a
girl,
conversation, please?
You give the white girl all the time to
Can we
talk.
have a conversation, please?
And a black
Okay, who's racist now?
Right.
girl is having to speak.
Actually, at the moment, the black girl is doing all the talking. So hang on.
What in the world was that?
Can I just say something, please?
That's my opinion.
All right.
That's my view.
Blossom, stop talking. Support for today's show comes from a business focused on nuance, straightforward.
All right. So let's jump in here.
Let me just explain to you why what you've just said is complete and utter nonsense. I'm very glad you raised the Sharon Osbourne thing, as you put it, just to remind people and you and educate you about what happened.
What do you think the chances are he just went to a commercial break to shut her up? Right? To say, you're on my show, stop talking.
I mean, perfect segue.
I was removed from my job hosting a morning show in Britain called Good Morning Britain because I disbelieved Meghan Markle's claims of racism against the royal family, okay? I never said a racist...
Why? I
hang
never
on.
understand why. She's a
Let me
black woman.
finish. I never said a racist thing about anybody, least of all Meghan Markle. I've never invoked her skin colour. In fact, on the day she got married to Prince Harry, I wrote a front page story in a national newspaper in this country in which I extolled the glorious moment we finally had a biracial wedding in our otherwise all-white royal family. You might be bored, but I'm going to address your allegation.
Okay,
that
Piers,
hang on,
you're doing
I haven't
all this
finished. I haven't
talking,
finished.
but I'm here to
I
talk
haven't
about trans
finished,
women in
Blossom.
sports,
Let me
okay?
finish. Let me just educate you.
Well, I didn't get to finish.
Let me just educate you with some
you don't
facts.
Get to disrespect a
You've
black
called me a
trans
race
woman. Do not
baiter.
interrupt a black
You've
trans
called me a
woman when
race.
she's speaking,
Please
okay?
stop talking. You've called me a race baiter. I'm
allegedly.
Hang on.
Alleged race
hang on. And you. Right. So let me finish. So what happened then was Sharon Osbourne, who was on a show called The Talk on CBS, now sadly no longer there because they got rid of Sharon. And guess what? Nobody wanted to watch it. And Cheryl Underwood, a black woman on that panel, set up Sharon Osbourne in the most despicable manner imaginable. And she said to Sharon Osbourne, why did you support Piers Morgan when he said those racist things?
Of course you would
and Sharon
think a black
Osbourne,
woman
hang
is
on,
doing things
you can respond when I finish telling you what happened. You can respond when I tell you what happened.
I just want you to know you
Blossom,
are a disgusting
you can respond.
white cis man.
You can respond when I finish telling you what happened. And you can challenge me on facts.
Go ahead.
What you can't challenge me is something you've seen on TikTok. So let me finish. So Sharon Osbourne was told,
TikTok.
why did...
Nobody said that on TikTok.
Someone's,
it was all over the news here in America.
Cheryl Underwood said to Sharon Osbourne,
We're here to talk about
okay, if you're going to keep talking, I'll mute you. I will mute you, but don't let me mute you. Let me just finish. Then you can respond. Cheryl Underwood said, why did you support Piers Morgan when he said those racist things? Sharon said, what racist things? And as a result of that, by getting annoyed that she was being set up to try and supposedly defend her friend me in saying racist things I'd never said. Sharon got fired from the talk, and she was left suicidal in the year that followed. Her whole career was sent down the drain because, ironically, the race baiter was actually the black woman on that panel, Cheryl Underwood, not Sharon Osbourne, and not me. So I'm very glad you raised the issue of race baiting, but let's be clear, as you're doing now, the race baiting came from Cheryl Underwood to Sharon Osbourne, and it's now coming from you. So now you can respond.
Cannot be racist, Piers.
Now you can
Black
respond.
Women cannot be racist to white women. Are you kidding me?
Sorry?
That makes no sense.
Sorry?
What?
Women cannot be racist to white women. Do you not understand that?
Oh, yes, they can.
You don't have the intellectual
capacity
yes, they can. To understand that?
Oh, yes, they can.
She just said, I'm sorry if you don't have the intellectual capacity to understand that.
I don't have the intellectual capacity to understand that.
Very much
and you've been
impossible.
racist to me.
That's very much impossible.
You've been racist to me, a white man, by saying I'm a race baiter. Yeah.
How am I racist to you? I'm black. I can't be racist to you.
You call me a race baiter with no evidence.
Oh my God.
I mean,
what are we? What's even happening?
Is this I can't help but ask the question: are we being trolled?
I don't think so. I think that this person, this Blossom person, actually believes this. I think that this is the argument of systemic injustice and systemic inequality, and as the oppressed, it is impossible for the oppressed person to be racist towards the oppressor. And because white people are the oppressors in this person's mind, there is no way for them to be racist. I think that's the argument that's being made. That's my guess. I don't know. I'm not an expert. It's just my guess. Let's see what they say right here.
To me,
when have I been a race baiter?
You could be racist to me.
When have I been a race baiter?
But I'm a powerhouse.
Tell me when I've been a race baiter.
I'm a powerhouse.
Well, you may be a powerhouse.
I understand something.
You may be a powerhouse. You may be a powerhouse.
Okay.
When have I been a race baiter?
I want you to admit that.
When have I been a race baiter?
Okay.
When have I been a race baiter?
Okay.
This is absurd.
No, hang on. Tell me,
Honey.
Blossom. Give me one example of me race baiting. Blossom, go.
I'm here at this point. I'm just here to talk about trans women in sports. I said what I said.
So you don't have anything, do you?
Repeat anything.
You called me a race baiter, but you have no evidence I've ever race baited. You admit it.
Do you believe African Americans are superior to?
Let's move forward.
Fascinating. Like so many people, you play that race card and you can't defend it. You can't support it. There is no evidence.
It's not. Hold on. Let me check you on that. Let me check you on that. You talk about this race card or whatnot. The race card is reality. My experience as a black trans woman is completely different than yours.
Reality?
As a white cis man.
Well, let me ask you about reality then.
Speaking, do not interrupt a black trans woman when I'm speaking.
Oh, don't be so pathetic.
Do not interrupt a black trans woman when I'm speaking, okay? Riley sits with so much privilege as a
So you can interrupt me for the last 10 minutes.
Like a halfback.
So just to be clear, hang on. Just to be clear, Blossom.
White tears about trans
All
women.
right, just can you mute Blossom for a moment, please? Thank you.
You're making
hang on, Riley. So to make the point that Blossom has just literally interrupted me for 10 consecutive minutes without pausing breath. But the moment Riley has the audacity to interrupt Blossom, guess what? That's the moment that the black transgender woman decides this is outrageous. Okay, you can unmute her now.
This feels like an SNL. This feels like an SNL skit.
It does.
Okay.
It does.
Yes, 100%.
Here's I just want you to remember that Blossom said what her basis and perspective of life is rooted in reality. So please remember that as we continue this conversation.
Which brings me to my question, which you haven't answered, Blossom, which is why do we separate the sexes in the Olympics?
Here's the thing. I'm not an Olympian.
Oh.
I don't play sports.
You don't know why we separate the sexes?
I think what you're saying is conservative propaganda. I think what you're saying is conservative propaganda.
Conservative propaganda.
That you're able
I
to
asked you why we separate. I asked you why we separate the sexes.
Off of that.
Why do we separate the sexes?
Again.
Why do we have the
Olympics
when
we talk about trans people? When we talk about trans people, we're talking about gender identity. I need both of y'all mindset to become more expansive.
Right.
I know that's a little hard for
Can you
both
answer
of
my
you.
question?
Because both of you have
Can you
the brains
answer
of a
my
peanut.
question?
I understand that's hard for both of y'all.
Can you answer my
I should
question?
say a seed.
Can you answer my question?
Again, when we talk about trans people, we're talking about gender identity. We're not just
That's
focused
not my
on
question.
sex.
That's not.
I think we get the gist, right?
Yeah.
This is wild, and it's legit. They're actually saying that. They are saying that they can't be racist because they're black, and as a result, they can only receive racism and can't give it. Which I know we disagree with that, but it's a real phenomenon that seems to be emerging. It's the whole white privilege, systemic racism argument. And I don't know why it's becoming so ingrained for some reason. And again, this is one person, so I'm not trying to, generalize an entire group of people based on one person, but this is not the first time I've heard this position. We've heard it from state representatives, right? Mm-hmm. Remember, Jasmine Crockett was saying something very similar recently.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, it seems like they've gotten off of the main point. It wasn't necessarily the people, the race of the people that were committing the atrocities in the past. It was the mere fact that they had this false perception of that, their superiority over another race, right?
Which ones are we talking about at this point?
So if we go back to the American history, right, where there's race, where there was slavery, right?
Slavery or just pre-Jim Crow?
Well, yeah, I mean, with Jim Crow as well, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, no one wants to be discriminated against in any way. That they don't want to experience prejudice against them just because their color of their skin, right?
Of course.
It seems like they have missed the point of it all, and the problem was the mistreatment of another person because of their skin.
Right.
They are looking at that as I'm trying to pull this together.
The problem was that it was a lack of rights that were based on what was perceived to be racial inequality. And the challenge with sitting here today in 2025, acting like that is still the case, and because they have this self-perceived inequality that they're receiving from these other racial groups, and because they're a minority, that they automatically do not have the ability to send racism the other direction because it only comes to them. It's hard to make that argument because in order to do that, you have to ignore the last 70 years of progress that have made in this country.
Right.
Right. Yet we're right after the civil rights movement. Were things perfect? No. Are things perfect now? No, but we have progressively in this country moved to a less and less racist society, but it's not even acceptable any longer, right? Like it's not something that most people will advocate, and if they are, they will be shunned and ignored and shut down because it's a completely indefensible argument.
Yeah.
So the idea that there is some ephemeral or ethereal inequality that exists that you automatically have to make up for, or that's the problem, is in the same way you couldn't argue, hey, because I'm black, I have this existential inequality that I receive, therefore I can do the same thing and show the exact same type of intolerance, judgment, racial scorn, or what in the reverse direction because of that inequality. It's trying to justify racism with racism.
Yeah, it's kind of like they wanted to take their proverbial shackles were taken off, and they want to put them on you. They want you to embody the history.
Right.
But we're supposed to move past, as culture has evolved, as society has evolved, we're supposed to have moved past that. We can't.
Like it's your turn to have the shackles now.
Right. That's yeah.
Yeah. 100. Yeah. That's the challenge with it.
And they won't be happy until the shackles are on. And I feel like, I mean, diversity, equity, inclusion is a terminology used to say anti-white man. That's what I feel like they're trying to do.
I don't know that I've seen it like that. You're not wrong. I get where you're coming from. I think I've seen it as, hey, look, historically there has been racial inequality, and as a result, because certain races have been put at such a severe disadvantage, we have to now handicap the majority so that the minorities have a fair chance. That's how I see DEI. And yes, I get it. I don't guess I've thought of it explicitly in terms of racism against white people, although I have noticed that it does seem to justify in a lot of people's mind a lot of racism towards white people.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking about white tears or it, but I think, again, arguing from a honorable or position of integrity on it says, look, the problem with it is it's the exact thing that you're decrying. You are saying that because racial injustice has occurred, the answer is it's my turn to possess the racial,
to be the oppressor,
upper hand. Right.
Yep.
So that's the challenge with it. Now,
wait. There's another piece that is absurd. That they're about to get into it. If you
sure.
Not my question.
That what y'all like to do is reduce conversations down to sex.
What you all like to do,
and you try to apply it to what's happening in the Olympics. Okay.
And I'm asking you
play in sports.
And I'm asking
trans
you.
women should participate in
the Olympics. The next Olympics. The
what
next
you're doing
okay, Blossom.
is spreading misinformation.
Blossom, I don't want to have to mute you again.
Conservative propaganda that should not be.
Okay. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. Our sponsors help us to bring it to you.
Gotta pay the bills, Piers.
Right.
In Los Angeles, I'll ask you one more time. Why do we separate the sexes in the Olympics? Why do we have men and women competing separately? Give me an answer.
Well, Piers, won't you tell me the answer since I don't know?
You don't know the answer? Oh, Riley's got a hand up. Riley,
Riley,
why don't you educate? Why don't you educate Blossom?
I don't know.
Riley, why do we separate the sexes in the Olympics?
Because men and women are different. We have different physical ceilings. It's the same reason why you have any category. It's the same reason why we have the Paralympics versus the Olympics. It's the same reason why we have weight classes in boxing. We don't have weight classes in boxing because we are fat shaming people who weigh more. No, we have weight classes because it would be unfair. We know the outcome. Every single person, kindergartners, know the outcome of what would happen if we had a 220-pound man fight a 170-pound man. It's the same reason why we have age divisions. We don't have 12 and unders or Pee Wee leagues.
That. What if that 220-pound? Wait. What if that 170-pound man has the agility to beat that 220-pound man? That makes no sense.
So you want to base all of the Olympics off of exceptions?
Your answer makes no sense. That makes no sense. Y'all don't know anything about somebody's biochemistry.
It makes sense
biology. You do not know.
Of common sense.
You do not know, Riley. I'm sorry. You absolutely do not know about somebody's biology.
You just admitted you're not an athlete.
Chemistry is
you
made
admitted
differently.
that you have never competed at the highest level.
And see, this is the thing. I don't have to be an athlete to talk about this because this affects my community.
But you just said you couldn't answer because you're not an Olympian.
All right, you know what we're going to try? Why don't we try? Okay. Can we please stop talking at the same time? If you talk at the same time, Blossom. If you talk, Blossom. If you talk at the same time, nobody can hear either of you. Okay? So, Blossom, let's start with you again. A simple question. I'll tell you why they separate the sexes, just as Riley has. It's because men have a physical advantage over women, which would mean that women would not win more than a handful of medals in the entire Olympics. Would you be happy if it was a gender-neutral Olympics?
Why are we?
Hang on.
Why
Answer
are we
my
saying
question.
This about women, though?
Answer
women
my question.
are just as strong as men.
I'm asking you.
I'm sorry. Women are just as strong as men.
So
women
just to be
are
clear,
just as powerful as men.
Okay.
And I don't believe that.
Okay, Blossom.
That's just.
They clearly have no idea what they're talking about.
I would. she's clearly powerful. I mean, well, Blossom is way more powerful than a lot of women. Probably 99.9%.
She's probably more powerful than the Olympian that she's sitting here talking about.
Right.
Or talking to, I mean.
And Piers. Probably more powerful than Piers.
That's right.
You know?
She's literally talking to an Olympic swimmer, and she's probably stronger than she is. Significantly so.
Yep.
And the point's lost on her because she's convinced herself that it's a failure of mental capacity by the people on the other side. They are just not intelligent enough to understand the complexity of her argument.
You know what it is? It's misogyny.
it's
that misogyny energy that wants to dominate and control everything. That's what this is.
It's an aggressive dude.
He just has a dress on, and we letting it pass.
And I'm not trying to shame this person. I'm just, you're right. It's a very aggressive standpoint.
Yeah. So we're almost to the point. This is a long segment.
It's all good. It's all good. We can trim it up anyway, so no worries.
That's your opinion.
So
That's
Blossom,
not always fact.
Blossom, if the world #1 tennis player...
I don't buy it.
Okay, you know that Serena Williams admits that she would be beaten by the top 1,000 men in the world at tennis, right? You know that, do you?
No, I did not.
You did not know that. So,
okay, where's the...
you don't know that. You don't know why men and women get separated Olympics.
I would like to read those receipts.
Both Serena and Venus Williams lost.
Are you waving them? Are you waving them around?
What?
You can look it up to the 203rd ranked male player. He drank in between sets, smoked in between sets, and played 18 holes of golf before, and admitted that he played like a 600 male ranked player. And they lost in a blowout, and they are phenoms, the best of the best. No other woman for a while even could come close to them, and they got beat by a man. Let me repeat it. In a blowout, the 203rd ranked male player who admitted he played like a 600 ranked player, drank, smoked between sets, and played 18 holes of golf.
Blossom, just to be clear, would you want the American Olympics, the LA Olympics, would you want them to be gender neutral where the sexes compete with each other?
Absolutely. I don't see anything wrong with it. I think as long as
do you also believe
it's completely insane?
Men and non-binary people.
Do you also believe
then yes,
that we should
why not?
It's completely insane.
This country was built on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
No,
and all
exactly.
that
This is why that's so nuts.
That does include cis women like.
And you know what you would do?
Hello?
You would exclude all women from winning medals. Well done.
That's also
fantastic.
That's not true. That is not true. Can we talk about Leah Thomas? Now, I bring up Leah Thomas because Riley knows her very well. I bring up Leah Thomas because the reality is, yes, she won some games, but Leah also lost some games to cis women. So there are some cis women who are faster than Leah. There are some cis women who are stronger than Leah. And again, when we talk about genetics, there are some cis women that have natural higher testosterone levels than trans women. That's why some of them may look more masculine. Iman Khalif had to experience that transphobia, which, by the way, transphobia affects all women. And now that Trump has excluded trans women from playing in sports, all women are going to be subjected to rigorous tests to make sure that they're...
do that, though.
Women's sport.
Yeah, he just stopped them from competing in women's sports to stop exactly what she's saying doesn't exist.
Are not trans. And that does include cis women. I don't care how feminine they look. You could potentially be subjected to these rigorous tests because Donald Trump took his peanut head, red, orange behind and signed an executive order that he doesn't even know anything about. He's a convicted felon, 34 felonies, right?
This is difficult
We also
to
need
listen
to be
to.
focusing on letting convicted felons in this country vote since we elected a convicted felon, right? There's so much more work. The economy is tanking here in America.
All right, Riley.
Gas prices are high.
Okay.
Why is Trump focused so much on trans people?
Because he
Neither
wants
one
to
of y'all
preserve
can
the
answer this
integrity.
question, because guess what?
I'll tell you
You're
why.
not
I'll tell you why,
trans.
Blossom. Because he's
You're
up
not
at.
trans
I'll tell you
here.
why, Blossom.
I'm a woman.
Hang on, Riley. Hang on, Blossom. Here's why. Because he's up against complete lunatics like you who think it would be right to have a gender-neutral Olympics. A gender-neutral Olympics is the most insane thing I've ever heard from any trans activist in history. Lunacy.
Exactly why Donald Trump won.
Well, you haven't found that until you met me. I'm not your average trans woman, in case you didn't notice that. I'm not your average trans woman.
Riley.
People like Blossom are exactly why Donald Trump won on November 5th. People, I believe,
please. Donald Trump rigged the election, which is why he's sitting in office now.
Can we mute?
And he's sitting up
This
there
is the most ridiculous
mute Blossom, please, because she can't stop talking. Riley, you respond.
People turned out, I believe, in masses to the polls on November 5th to embrace Donald Trump, to embrace the America First agenda, to embrace his cabinet picks. But more so, I believe people turned out to the polls to reject absurdity. And that is exactly what the past 30 minutes have been on this program, Pierce, is totally, entirely, and thoroughly absurd from top to bottom. Saying there should be a gender-neutral Olympics?
I know.
Are you serious?
Madness.
Do you also believe, Blossom, that we should combine the Paralympics and the Olympics? I would love to hear an answer to that.
Okay, I'll ask her. Bring back Blossom. Blossom, should we combine the Paralympics with the regular Olympics? Have them all compete with each other?
I mean, why not? And to go back to
I
don't think Blossom knows what the Paralympics are.
I don't think so either. Or maybe she does if she's that delusional.
I don't know. She gave the eye roll and failed to answer, but I don't know. I don't know. But here, let's see what she says.
You are completely insane.
Go back to that last one.
Yeah.
No,
So
because
no
she
Paralympian would win a
said
medal.
something that I wanted to respond to.
So no Paralympian will win a medal. So your diversity,
thing
equity,
is,
and inclusion
people
turns
went
out
to
to be
the polls
unequal
because
and
they
doesn't
wanted
include
a better economy.
any Paralympian or any
People went
woman.
to the polls because they want prices to
gosh.
come down. People went to the polls.
I don't need to hear any more.
Yeah, Blossom's looking for political activism, not an engaged debate. Blossom doesn't understand the subject matter that Blossom is talking about.
Not at all.
So.
She confessed it a couple times.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm not an Olympic. She doesn't even understand the concept behind Olympics and the reason for these weight categories and gender categories, and she doesn't understand
her strength.
Right.
Or their strength.
Right. So speaking of which, this segues us into President Trump, and let's watch his. This was recent, 2 days ago, the 21st. So yesterday.
2 weeks ago, I signed an executive order banning men from playing in women's sports. Many Democrats are fighting me on that. I hope you continue because you'll never win another race. And it's just crazy. If you look at what happened with the boxing, if you look at what happened with the weightlifting numbers, where a record that hadn't been broken for 19 years got shattered. But, they put up an eighth of an ounce here, an eighth of an ounce there on this 218 pounds or whatever was that. And hadn't been broken in 19 years. And then guy walks up who transitioned. He transitioned. And he knocked out that record by about 100 pounds. That will be a record not going to be broken again in a long. So we put a ban on it, and to protect women. I mean, the women. If you watch the Olympics, you had two transitioned people that were fighting in the women's boxing. They have women's boxing category, and if you saw that, it was brutal. What happened to the Italian woman was a really good boxer. After one punch, she said, no more. I've never been hit. It was a left. It was not even it was just a left jab. She got hit so hard, she said, I can't do it. They forced her to go out. No, go out again. You'll do it. Goes out again, gets hit again. No, that's it. She didn't want to die. And it's crazy, but the NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine?
Well, I'm here.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one.
So, yeah.
I mean.
Well, I think he did a good job of explaining it, at least.
Yeah, he did.
Right, of articulating the reasoning behind what he did, even though I'm sure Blossom would disagree, but...
Yeah, she would.
Well, yeah, she was.
They would. They was.
Yeah, right. But yeah, this is what we were talking about before. It makes no sense. The only reason for those categories in the first place is to introduce a level playing field.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tell, because the goal is to get to where hard work, preparation, and skill is the defining factor.
Merit.
That's right.
Yeah, and I have to agree with Riley on the previous segment. Part of the reason I voted for Trump was observing the ridiculousness in voting against that.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
The craziness. Yes. It's just absolutely unbelievable. But so next, our next video is regarding the layoffs and Trump's layoff. This is a podcaster named Angela Rose. Shout out. She's provided a pretty awesome podcast here. So we're just going to watch and we ready to go?
Yep.
Let's do it.
I was a federal worker who had 1 month left of her probationary period, and today I was told that I will be terminated at some point this week. I'm utterly devastated. I'm confused because my recent performance evaluation was exceptional and I got upwards of $1,500 as a bonus because my performance was so good. And this was my dream job, and it's just being taken away by an administration who doesn't care about science and doesn't care about people who might be homeless with their dog now. They don't care about our species that we're trying to conserve. That's exactly what my job was doing. It was just to assess habitat conservation for species for a 55-year habitat conservation plan. We should all be so mad right now. We should all be crying like this because I'm just devastated.
Okay, so we should all be crying right now because they are no longer going to be able to conserve this 55-year-old habitat. And she is obviously devastated because she was really good at her job. Now, obviously, no raindrop is going to blame themselves for the storm. However, it just doesn't sound like her job was a priority for a government that is almost going bankrupt right now.
Right. Perfect point. We can't afford this.
That our government is becoming so much more efficient. But maybe I just don't get it, and she can explain.
I think it's so important for American people to understand what's happening. Their government, their watchdog agencies, the people who go to work every day to fight for them are being fired illegally in what is just a wholesale dismantling of entire agencies.
Now, you're a lawyer, and you know firsthand that a lot of this is happening illegally. Explain what we're missing here and how this can happen if indeed what is happening is illegal.
Wow.
It's a great question, Kira. Civil servants have a lot of protections under the law, and we're only supposed to be fired if our performance falls short on the job. So what has happened is that the administration has fired us. We call it layoff sometimes, but that's not what it is. It's an illegal firing. And, it's just not credible to say that thousands of people were determined to fall short of expectations. I mean, literally every probationary employee at my agency was fired. It can't be that we all fell short.
I mean, it doesn't matter how good you are at a job if that job doesn't matter, if that job is not adding to the quality of life of Americans, or if it is not making us money and in fact is worsening our financial situation as a country.
Agreed.
The perfect representation of this kind of work is the DMV, or like people who work at the security in the airport, because they can be so rude. They can do their jobs so slowly. They don't care about customer service. They don't care about actually providing any value because they know that they have a job guaranteed no matter what. So then you go to the DMV and you sit in lines for hours and hours. And when you finally get to the front, they're rude to you. They don't actually want to help you. I mean, our government has been so inefficient for so long that they are not entitled to compensation, entitled to a set in stone job for years and years to come, even if they're good at it. I mean, they need to be adding value to people's lives. Otherwise, why are taxpayers paying for their careers? It just doesn't make any sense. I am going to skip around this video a little bit, but it just shows how entitled these workers have become and how they are simply taking advantage of a broken system. So here is a federal worker's experience.
I used to be a federal employee, and I'm going to tell you why I don't feel bad for federal employees being forced to come back into the workplace. I worked for the Army Corps of Engineers for almost a year, and the abuses that I saw by government employees was astounding and shocking. I worked as a realty specialist, and that is someone who manages government-owned lands. So when farmers and ranchers lease land to graze cattle, we would manage that. When I was hired, my boss bragged that it was basically impossible to get fired from the federal government.
Right.
And that in her entire time working for the government, she'd only seen one person fired. And that person assaulted a fellow employee. And she wasn't even fired for assaulting the employee at work. She was fired for lying about it because they caught it on camera.
Okay, I mean, I don't understand how these federal employees are trying to convince us to be angry when it honestly just boils down to two words that Trump and Elon have been repeating, and that is competence and care. Two things that our government is lacking immensely right now. The truth is our government has become too big, too out of control. Their spending is absolutely insane that it makes sense for Trump to want to make our government smaller.
You go, girl.
I get paid while running my farm and all my side businesses. I'm not going to have my passive income from the federal government. I'm sorry, we don't care. We don't care.
So pay attention. The Trump administration has decided that in order to do a wide-scale reduction in force, they are going to just, without any regard for who the people are, what their positions are, or their seniority, whatever, any probationary employee that is still within their 1 to 2 year period is just fired. And that's what happened this weekend in the Department of Health and Human Services and its sister agencies like the National Institutes of Health, which is who I work for. Okay, so probationary employees fired. My colleagues and I all got the same form letter from an unknown HR account saying that we had been fired for performance issues, okay, which, as you can imagine, with no proof to back up performance issues and the exact same form letter sent to all employees, performance issues really aren't the problem here. So obviously I'm upset.
I disagree. The performance of the agency is 100% the problem here, right? If the agency is underperforming, inappropriately performing, or not doing what it's supposed to do, then the first step you would take would be to stop all new hires and figure out how to optimize.
I mean, I understand we need to have reduction, and then I get that the letter sent to the employees with the statement that it's due to performance issues. They're gonna think that it's personal performance, unless it implicitly clarifies the fact.
Oh, okay.
Because
sure. Okay.
Right. So that's an argument there. That's obviously they're upset that they're being fired, but then they are questioning this statement within the letter of firing.
I see your point.
Due to performance issues.
I see your point. However, I look at it more at the 50,000-foot view, right? The holistic view, which is the performance of the organization is definitely what's being curtailed. So it is performance related, and it's not because you can't do your job, but because either your job isn't needed, your job isn't necessary, your job isn't the future path of the agency, it's not what it's going to be doing anymore, or we are downscaling the organization, right? Which any of those can be described as overall performance issues. But again, I think that since there are so many people that are going through the same thing, as you go to future jobs, they're going to know that it wasn't your specific performance. They're going to know that you were a probationary probationary employee, and the first step was to eliminate probationary positions. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But
right, like I landed in Arizona to visit my grandmother and some other family members, and at 10 o'clock at night, I was checking my work email to find this form, termination letter that was sent to everyone else in my position at the agency. So it sucks, right? Like,
I mean, there are a couple of terms for this. It's like boo-hoo, so sad, cry me a river, cry me a Gulf of America, that kind of thing. I mean, it's just after seeing how our money is being wasted, I'm sorry. It is not your right to have a job in our government. It is a privilege. But yet we have people posting things like this. Immigrants didn't steal my job. The president did. Oh, I don't think that your job was stolen. I think that it was deemed probably not very worthwhile. And so now it's no longer.
Guess who just got fired via phone call? Me! I was a forestry technician for the USDA Forest Service, and my crew dealt with timber sales and management. So think salvage sales, wildfire mitigation, American lumber product, forest and ecosystem health. So I was still in my probationary period, and I was 3 months away from getting my 1 year. I have put 5 years of my career into public service and natural resources. And this is how we are getting treated right now. Now, my supervisor can't answer any of my questions, like what's going to happen to my last paycheck because they're going to log us out and we won't be able to put in our time. What's going to happen to my health insurance? Am I going to get my separation form, my final one? Because I need that paperwork to apply for unemployment.
Does anybody else find it a little bit strange to hear these federal employees speaking about normal everyday things that everybody has to go through, but they're speaking about them as if they shouldn't have to deal with this? It's like, I shouldn't have to figure out where I'm going to work next. I mean, I worked really hard for the government for 5 years. Therefore, I shouldn't have to worry about this for the rest of my life, pretty much. I should be taken care of. I shouldn't have any worries. It's like, you do realize that all people have problems. You do know that it rains on the rich, right? You know that Donald Trump also has issues in his life too. Not everything is perfect, even though you might like to think so just because he's wealthy. No, everybody has problems, and taking to the internet is quite interesting. Not sure how it's going to help you solve them. Let's listen to somebody being fired. A team, perhaps.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. This is a difficult conversation, and I want to be direct while also ensuring that you have all the information and support that you need. As you know, your position has been subject to a probationary trial period, which is standard practice to assess whether employees meet the necessary performance and conduct expectations for continued employment.
A lot of these people who have been talking about being fired were in this probationary period. So it's not even like they were super official, I mean, they were still being tested as well. So, I mean, also another reason to not really feel super bad.
You will receive your termination notice via email shortly, and it will include the reason for termination. As a result, your employment with the Office of Personnel Management will end today. Your physical and IT system access will be deactivated by 3 p.m. Eastern today, and we ask that you gather your personal belongings and exit the premises by 3 p.m. Eastern as well.
It is so amazing to see how an incredible businessman is running our country right now. It's going to make us wealthy again. Can't wait.
I was one of the thousands of federal workers terminated this weekend. Let's talk about it. Am I surprised? No.
I was working for a federal health agency, so once RFK Jr. was confirmed last week, and they started almost immediately with the CDC and firing off 1,300 probationary workers on Friday. Whoa. I knew that my time was coming very shortly after, and I got my email on Saturday. It was from an email I've never seen before. It was something like important HR notification at agency.gov, an email I've never seen before. It didn't confirm.
You know what? The worst part about this whole thing is that when they opened these emails, it wasn't just a gif of Trump saying, "You're fired." You know, that would have been just the best outcome. And I think it would have made him feel just a little bit better. Add some humor in there. I don't know. Maybe it's a bad idea.
One of my managers or direct supervisors, I haven't heard from anybody superior to me. I just got that email letting me know I was terminated for performance. Email said something along the lines of, the agency does not see my current skills and abilities as fit for continued employment, and therefore they're terminating my employment. And this is the same.
I mean, if I was speaking to this girl personally and we were friends, I would tell her not to take it personally. It's not about your skills specifically. Trump is looking at this as a broader problem and looking at how to solve it. And I mean, she's young. She has her whole life ahead of her. People have been really angry that Americans are happy that federal employees are getting fired left and right. I mean, when Elon Musk bought Twitter, do you think it would be doing as well if he kept all of the same employees?
Okay, so for the record, this is something that the only point I'm making isn't that I delight in these people losing their jobs. I am glad that the workforce is being reduced. But the advice would be the same as it is to any person in the private sector. It would be, don't take it personally. It's business, right? There are professional reasons. And move on, right? Just don't take it personally. Learn from it. Use it and keep going. But you see it differently?
Right. I mean, I definitely, getting laid off is not an easy thing for anyone to deal with. These cuts were telegraphed. Like before he was elected, he was talking about cutting, expenses and downsizing government.
This girl said she knew it was coming. She knew it was coming.
Right. They knew it was coming. And then also, a lot of these people that are posting these videos are kids. They haven't been through all of the different administration changes that we have. We've seen this sort of thing. Every administration does a drastic change.
And I think that's part of the point too, is they've been very insulated in these federal positions where it's very difficult to lose the job or very difficult to be removed.
Yeah. Even when I was younger, I was always told, get a federal job because it's secure. You're going to get a pension.
Really?
You don't have to worry about layoffs or any of that stuff. But that's not true.
No.
When there is an administration change, a lot of heads roll. A lot of jobs get sacrificed. A lot of bureaucracies change. They get dissolved.
Yes.
Spun up. And, we got some data that we can share with you to prove it.
As a matter of fact, yes. If we look at the largest job cuts, so the biggest federal job cutters, aside from the fact that they're Democrats, I don't know that that's relevant, but Lyndon B. Johnson reduced the federal workforce by 440,000 people. Ronald Reagan reduced it by 197,000. Joe Biden. Wait. Is this reduce? Is this up or down?
That's increased. The bottom is reduced.
I'm sorry. I'm going the wrong direction. So Lyndon B. Johnson increased by 440,000. Reagan increased by 197. Biden by 138. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Truman reduced by 556,000. Bill Clinton reduced by 339,000. Dwight D. Eisenhower by 170,000. George Bush by 66,000, Nixon by 36, so on and so forth. So this is not a completely abnormal thing. What is, I think, abnormal is the degree to which some of the agencies are being cut, right? For example, the Department of Education being done away with completely, or USAID being, those jobs have historically been very well insulated. Yeah. And these were people that felt very comfortable and confident that they were going to continue. These are bureaucratic positions. They're not elected. So once they get in, the stringent union policies and retention policies insulate them highly. And so that's the reason I chose this video with Angela Rose, is because while she's being very flippant about it and being very nonchalant about it, which I don't feel the same way necessarily, but while that's the case, she's making a good point that the private sector has to deal with this. You go and do a job, and if you don't do the job better than the people next to you or the person next to you, you lose your job, and you have to go elsewhere. So it's a survival of the fittest in the private sector,
right?
That I don't think the federal workforce is accustomed to.
Correct. Yeah.
So, so moving on, you want to introduce the next one?
Yeah. So as we know, there's a conflict with Russia and Ukraine, and we got some commentary here. People who are in opposition of the war coming to an end, and we just want to cue it up and see what you think.
Let's do it.
Yes. The big news is this week that Donald Trump looks like he's making peace with Russia and putting an end to the Ukraine proxy war that has cost U.S. taxpayers well over $100 billion and cost Ukraine its future and hundreds of thousands of people.
Wasn't the number well over 200 billion?
Yeah, I've heard as high as
290 something billion dollars is the last I think I heard. So yeah.
And it looks like Trump is bucking the establishment, the bipartisan establishment, and putting this to an end. So how are Democrats, the ones who have been pushing this policy of using Ukraine for a proxy war against Russia, who were behind the 2014 Maidan coup that triggered this conflict that has ensued ever since, how are they handling Trump's embrace of peace and diplomacy? Well, let's check in. This is Senator Ruben Gallego speaking to MSNBC. Ruben Gallego, excuse me.
Yes, but what follow-up? Do you believe that Vladimir Putin will stop at Ukraine? If Donald Trump gives Vladimir Putin what he would like, allows him to keep the territory that he has stolen, essentially, from the Ukrainian people, will he stop there?
The history of Russia, whether it's communist Russia, Tsarist Russia, whatever the heck Putin is always to expand, always to try to get more and more and try to conquer more and more, especially anything that they consider their former territory. But, Russia is a weak country. And for some reason, this president is just enamored with the idea of Russia being the strong country. Russia historically has lost almost all of their wars, especially all the wars of expansion. And we need to give and empower Ukraine the ability for them to actually absolutely destroy Russia. Because destroying Russia means that the rest of Western Europe is secure too.
Wow. Yes, but
so there we go. Senator Ruben Gallego, he wants us to destroy Russia.
Wow.
Isn't NATO enough protection for NATO? I thought the purpose of NATO was if you attack NATO, then NATO will come to the rescue. Not that you have to defend countries that are not in NATO because God forbid they could next attack NATO.
Yeah, and he's forgetting that, listen, the Soviet Union lost a lot of people in the Second World War, but they also helped defeat the Nazis. And is he upset that Russia didn't lose that
I'm sure
war?
he thinks they are the Nazis. Most of these people think that.
They do.
They just throw Hitler around and you're like, wow, you don't know any history.
Even as they're, of course, arming the actual Nazis inside Ukraine, who openly wear Nazi insignia and celebrate Hitler's birthday. Yeah.
I don't want to ever hear about Nazis here ever again after you gave, and by the way, it's probably about 300 billion, because I thought Zelensky, how much did he admit to losing? That they just don't know where it is?
Well, he said it was about 150 billion, and he said he didn't know where half of it went. So by his account, it's about 75 billion that's missing. But I agree with you.
Go ahead and double it. Carlito's Way rules. You just double it, How much is Sasso missing from the club? Just double it for his gambling.
Here is Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
He's flagrantly lying. And the worst thing is that not just that a president of the United States is lying about something where he's obviously lying, but that his lies track perfectly with the talking points of Vladimir Putin.
Oh, no.
So if you go back to, remember Trump Russia? The Mueller report said there was Trump Russia. Bipartisan Senate intelligence report said there was
You're
Trump.
Kidding.
What?
You're kidding me.
I'm sorry, what did the Mueller report say?
The Mueller report said there was Trump Russia. You notice how he's not saying Trump Russia collusion? Right. That was the key word that they said every single day, nonstop for more than 2 years.
That was actually
Ukraine should be filling it in now.
Exactly. So, but he
Right.
can't say collusion anymore because he knows that actually there was no collusion.
It's
Now
like
he's
crossing
going
state
with-
lines. The same difference, you know. He crossed state lines, and you're like, "What is that a crime? What do you mean?"
But
And
now
when
they're
Mueller
going-
report came out, it was nothing, right? And then they had to go, "Well, it didn't exonerate Trump."
That
As
was
if
the best they could do. He's not exonerated, and even there, that was not exonerated for obstruction, for obstructing the probe into the conspiracy theory that he was a Russian asset. So yes, he was not.
That was created by the Clinton campaign, funded by the Clinton campaign, propagated and leaked by the Clinton campaign, and investigated by the Obama administration.
Exonerated on that, according to Mueller, but that was a useless. And that was a term with no legal meaning. Like either you're guilty or you're not. It's not about whether you're exonerated, and that was about obstruction, not about the core issue.
That was a big part of this subject matter in Kash Patel's book, Government Gangsters.
Which now he wants to forget, which
Right.
is collusion with Russia.
I only say collusion theory from now. I don't say conspiracy theories. I believe in collusion theories.
Russia, repeated trials brought in evidence showing there was Trump Russia. There was, is, and ever shall be Trump Russia. This is Trump Russia rearing its ugly head again.
What is that?
And I think a lot of my colleagues on the Republican side are going to be pushing back hard behind the scenes on the White House in the days ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure the Republicans are going to be motivated to push back on Trump if you keep claiming that Trump Russia is a thing.
So just to be clear, I struggle with this because Trump is trying to deal with both parties, right? The thing that's at a certain point, and I don't know if it happened after the fact, but there was a point where Tucker Carlson went over and did an interview with Putin. You recall?
Yeah.
And in that interview, Putin was like, "No, I've never spoken to the Biden White House. I've never talked to them." The war has been going on for 2 years at this point, and he never had a conversation with them. They accurately called it a proxy war, which is exactly what was going on. And, I don't think people appreciate the degree to which this issue has been sensationalized and propagandized, because there is just no comparison between us and Russia, right? I mean, none at all. It's the scale. As a matter of fact, did you want to watch more, or do you want to jump?
No, we can jump. Yep.
Because if you look at let's just go by military spending, right? If you look at the military spending, defense spending rather, of the United States, we spent in 2023 $916 billion on defense. Comparatively, the closest 9 countries behind us, so countries ranked number 2 through 10 in defense spending, spent a combined $883 billion. That's China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom, Germany, Ukraine, France, and Japan. And notice Ukraine's spending, that's us, right? That's the aid we're sending them. But all of those countries combined don't equal the defense spending of the United States. This paints a fairly accurate picture. So what we're talking about is a country that's spending just under $1 trillion in defense spending has initiated and continued a proxy campaign, a proxy war against Russia. And there's no comparison. It's not an apples to apples comparison. Their equipment is dated. Their military is now almost reduced irrevocably. And it's just crazy the way that this continues to be painted on the left as if Russia has just done all of this. And it's so uninformed, in my opinion. What do you think?
Well, I keep thinking back to the history of Russia and NATO, in how, the U.S. has agreed to stop progressing east, and
that was after World War II.
Yep, and after talks with Ukraine, and then I know you know quite a bit about the history of this, and you can probably speak more in depth about it. But I specifically recall a couple weeks before the Russia invaded Ukraine, they were talking about adding them to NATO, right? And I remember Kamala, I almost forgot her name. She flew to Ukraine to sort of introduce the possibility of them entering into NATO. And then there's clips online you can see several weeks before Russia invaded. So that's when Russia stepped in, according to my information, and tried to take control. So, I mean,
it's a very complex issue. You're right. After World War II, there were, as part of the peace accords, there were 450,000 troops, Soviet troops, that remained in. This was the Berlin Wall, and that lasted until Reagan. And when Reagan finally convinced Gorbachev to back the troops out, the agreement they made was not an inch to the east. So no more military progression on behalf of NATO, U.S. or allies toward Russia, and that stayed in effect. And so as a result of that, 450,000 troops, Soviet troops, were pulled out of Berlin. Berlin was turned over to NATO peacekeeping forces, and it took exactly 8 years till the Clinton administration, and they began pushing forward and ultimately ended up setting up bases in 10 states surrounding Russia. And I don't even want to get into all the details of what happened in Ukraine, but we chopped the head off of that snake and replaced the government. And the whole time Russia's going, you said you wouldn't do this, right? This was against the agreement that we have. What are you doing? And finally, and I'm not trying to say that Russia didn't act inappropriately and that they didn't aggress, and I'm not trying to say everything is our fault. I'm just saying it's not as one-sided as it sounds when you say, oh, Russia just invaded, and there's a lot more details to consider in that equation.
Yep.
So,
yep.
So I have a hard time with a tagline being, oh, look, Russia, we've got to destroy Russia, we've got to destroy Russia. We could destroy Russia. We don't have any business destroying Russia, I don't believe. Right. I think we need to seek peace, and I think that's what Trump's after.
Yeah, I agree.
So the final issue is this.
Do you think that calling Elon Musk a dick is effective messaging for confronting what is a potentially irreversible transformation of the U.S. government?
Well, he is a and I think that he's also harming the American public in an enormous way. And what I think is really important, and what the American public want, is for us to bring actual weapons to this bar fight. Actual weapons to this bar fight. This is an actual fight for democracy, for the future of this country, and it's important to push back on the chairperson of this committee. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene talks about having decorum, about bipartisanship. This is the person that lies more than anybody else in the entire Congress. And so if she is going to make a mockery of hearings, I want to make sure that us as Democrats are bringing that same level of energy. And of course, after those comments, we went into exactly what Elon Musk is trying to do: dismantling the Department of Labor, dismantling the Department of Education, dismantling all of our consumer protection agencies. And so it's all important, but it's also important to get the attention of the American public and call Elon Musk out for what he is, and to make people know that Marjorie Taylor Greene is not a serious legislator and she shouldn't be treated as such.
Absolutely horrible.
So, wow.
Right. Weapons. Bring weapons.
Right. Did you see the sign behind him? It said "Eliminate Elon" with a big red X across him. It's crazy.
It is.
And he talking about weapon. Dude, this is rhetoric that I can't.
We can't have these people as leaders. They have constituents. They have people that voted for them, put them in place. When you say things like this, people take it literal. There's a lot of deranged people out there. There's a lot of misguided people that are upset, and they have weapons. And they're listening.
They're listening when you're trying to incite violence.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you're trying to justify your inciting violence.
Right.
You're saying that the other side deserves it because what they're doing is so egregious. This is the thing that got him almost assassinated twice, shot once.
Right.
Him being Trump, obviously.
And now he's putting the bullseye on Elon.
Right. And I hope that we have a contingent. I want to know where the Democrats are. I want to know where the Democrats are that I have voted for in the past. I want to know where the Democrats that recognize this is completely inappropriate are, and I want to know where the Democrats that are going to speak up and say, look, this is not the way we conduct ourselves as a country. This country needs the Democrat Party. It needs it to be healthy. It needs it to be functional. It needs it to be uncompromised and
bipartisan.
It needs to be moderated in a very real way.
Yeah.
Because we need people that understand that sometimes the Democrats are right on issues and sometimes the Republicans are right on issues, and some happy medium or some moderate line down the middle is often the advisable approach. But as long as they keep acting extremist and in this way, I don't know how we move forward with because eventually I think everybody will just jump to the other side. This will become so, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's what made me jump to the other side.
Me as well.
This type of rhetoric, this type of dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is destructive to society.
I agree. And that is the destruction of democracy. When you try to thwart democracy and you try to, especially when you're trying to maintain obfuscation and corruption and yeah. So, well, on that, I think we need to wrap. So we had another one, but we can pick that one up next time. So.
Yep, absolutely.
Anything else before we close?
Nope, that'll do it.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a great night, a great week. And stay safe, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Sounds good.
Cheers.